Okay. Namaste. My name is Harish Venkataraman, and I'm from Frisco, Texas. Today, I'll be presenting a talk on ancient India's navigation and maritime activity. This paper aims to investigate the origins and advancement of ancient Indian maritime activity and navigation. We will explore references in the Vedas, examine archaeological findings, and review contemporary research to uncover the antiquity and sophistication of Indian seafaring and navigation methods. The common belief is that the first people to have navigated the seas were from the areas around the Mediterranean Sea, such as the Minoans around 2000 BCE. However, when we examine the Vedas, archaeological evidence, and scholarly research, there's compelling evidence of Indian maritime activity dating back to around 18,000 BCE. India has 6,000 miles of coastline, and notably, India is the only country to have an ocean named after it. By 4000 BCE, Indian ships dominated the seas and the oceans surrounding it. Ancient Indian maritime history is one of richness, advancement, and antiquity. It is important to note that the English word navigation had been derived from the Sanskrit word navgati, meaning ship motion. Ancient Indians were known to have mastered the construction of ships that were faster, lighter, and had greater carrying capacity than those built elsewhere. The Rig Veda, believed to be the earliest of the Vedas, mentions events that are at least 21,000 years old. The Rig Veda notes Varuna's knowledge of sea routes and also mentions merchants sending ships for trade. Other verses describe merchants traveling across the sea and a voyage by Vashishta and Varuna. Additionally, Tugra sent his son Bujya on an expedition who was shipwrecked and rescued by the Ashwins. Since when has India been navigating the seas? In the Ayodhya Kanda of the epic Valmiki's Ramayana, he describes ships capable of carrying hundreds of warriors. This indicates the use of ships since the Vedic age. In the Kishkinda Kand of Ramayana, Sugriva instructs the Vanara leaders to explore islands like Java and in Sumatra to find Sita. The Ramayana also talks of adventures to South America where the candelabra of the Andes is carved into the mountain. In the Mahabharata, Sahadeva is mentioned traveling to various islands in the sea to get help to defeat the kings. In the Karna Parva, the soldiers of the Kauravas are depicted as merchants whose ships are lost in the sea, and also describes how the sons of Draupadi rescued their maternal uncles by supplying them with chariots. Another verse in the Mahabharata describes how the Pandavas escaped destruction thanks to a special ship built secretly by Vidura. This large ship had advanced machinery and weapons with the ability to withstand storms. All of this technology is very impressive, given that the date suggested for the Mahabharata is around 5561 BCE. When we take a closer look at the Vedas, ships are referenced in various verses in the Brahmanas, Ramayana, Mahabharatas, and Puranas. The Atharva Veda also references spacious and well-constructed boats. In the Valmiki Ramayana, Sugriva describes journeys to regions resembling the Andes, Antarctica, and the Alps, detailing geography from India through Peru and Chile. He informs Vinata and his team that they will encounter diverse people with physical modifications like long ears, rings around the neck, and lip piercings. Sugriva also mentions Rakshasas called Madihas, hanging from mountain peaks, likely referring to bats. He describes them as creatures that hang on cliffs, drop into the water at sunrise, and are scorched by the sun, possibly referring to vampire bats, which are known to be in South America. Oh no, the oceans gobbled up Pumpuhar. What happened to it? Well, researchers from the Bharatidasan University in Trichy in 2017 have found a massive seaport from 18,000 BCE off the coast of Tamil Nadu. This is nearly a 15,000-year-old structure and reveals a history of busy maritime trade in the region of Pumpuhar. Pumpuhar, or Kaveri Pumpattinam, was a major port city established by the Chora dynasty around 2,000 years ago, with trade links across Asia and beyond. However, about 1,000 years ago, it mysteriously disappeared from maritime history. Researchers are using ocean mapping and old sea level data and to determine that the original Pumpuhar was located about 30 kilometers east of its current location and moved 4 times inland due to continuously rising sea levels and the resultant change in coastline. This massive seaport in Pumpuhar could handle 70 to 80 ships, had seawalls, a lighthouse, a harbor, and inland canals for loading and unloading cargo. It was submerged at sea levels matching those of 18,000 BCE. Now let's see how ancient Indians used GPS to navigate. The Surya Siddhanta astronomers projected a celestial circle in the sky with 21,600 arc minutes. Using 21,600 as the circumference of an imaginary sphere, they used the formula 2 pi r to come up with the 3,438 as the radius of the imaginary circle on the celestial sky. A navigator of the seas could determine the distance traveled if they knew the angle of the star. Using the positions of the star, Indian maritime navigators could easily determine their position anywhere on Earth, as they had an easy-to-use GPS to determine their position anywhere on Earth, and hence calculating distances when navigating the oceans. It's 6,500 BCE. Let's head to Denmark. Genetic evidence may indicate movement of people from the Indus Valley civilization to Europe's coastal areas using the seas. Boris Boom, in his paper, discusses the I haplogroup, which suggests large-scale human migration from ancient India. This haplogroup is concentrated in North and Northwest India and near the east, appearing in coastal areas of Europe, the Arabian Peninsula, the Mediterranean, and Denmark. Where ancient Europe, the Arabian Peninsula, the Mediterranean, and Denmark, where ancient DNA showed 13% compared to 5.71% today, suggesting dilution. Inland Europe showed no high levels, indicating sea-based migration rather than land migration. Additionally, Y chromosome data shows outward migration from India to Europe, the Far East, and North Asia between 2,000 and 15,000 years ago. All DNA, however, traces back to Africa, 60,000 to 120,000 years ago. Ancient Indian shipbuilders didn't just know how to float a boat, they knew how to rule the seas. Ships were classified into 2 categories based on size, shape, and names. Samanya, ordinary, and Vishesha, special. Indian navigational techniques were far ahead of their time, with thriving trade even before Alexander's era. Aryabhata and Varamihira accurately mapped celestial bodies, helping sailors navigate by the stars. Key ports like Nagapattinam, Arikamedu, and Mamallapuram facilitated trade with Indonesia, China, Arabia, Rome, and Africa. Between the 5th and 10th centuries, the Vijayanagara and Kalinga kingdoms dominated regions like Malaya and Java. This is a generally accepted timeline of ancient Indian maritime history. Around 18,000 BCE, a large port in Pumpuhar existed. Around 12,000 BCE, there were boats with hundreds of oarsmen mentioned in the Ramayana. Around 8,000 BCE, there were older updates of Surya Siddhanta that have sign tables for calculating positions of stars and GPS. Around 5,000 BCE, the Mahabharata describes large ships with advanced machinery and weapons that were capable of withstanding storms. Around 4,000 BCE, Indian ships have piled the Indian Ocean. Around 3,000 BCE, there were extensive trade from India to the east near the Mediterranean. And around 6,500 to 1,500 BCE, there was a haplogroup I that came from India, which shows that people traveled via seas all the way to Denmark. To wrap up,